MCU that can provide both artificial intelligence and wireless connectivity. Focus really closely on building relationships with our customers, getting them evaluation kits. We need more female engineers, we need more females entering the semiconductor space. There's that person sitting right across from me who's doing a very similar job to me, getting paid more just because they're male.
So this is a SemiConscious podcast, and I'm today delighted to be with Alexandra Kazerounian, who's Senior Marketing Manager at Alif Semiconductor. Alexandra, welcome, and it's lovely to be able to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim. Excited to speak with you today.
Pleasure. All right. So we're going to talk a lot about sort of the semiconductor industry, the electronics industry, and how that feels to you in your position. But let's start with just your route into semiconductors. I think it wasn't where you actually started your career, if I'm right.
Yeah, you're correct. So after graduation, I actually started in the sales industry, first as an account executive and then as a sales manager.
And in what kind of company was that?
That was in a review company known in the U.S. for restaurants and even things like a handyman or plumber. So it's a platform where people go to leave reviews.
Kind of a software business.
Exactly. I started in sales there, and I learned a lot. Definitely built all those raw business skills that you need when you're fresh out of university. But I think I realized from talking to clients on the phone that I wanted to be closer to marketing and the business side, where you're actually making the decisions that can help the customers you're talking to and not just doing the selling. So I really wanted to have my hands on the product and be able to make an impact in what we were actually bringing to customers. And that's what led me to transition to marketing.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So you went from that sales role into marketing, and was that the point of your move to Alif Semiconductor?
Yep, that's correct. I had done some marketing internships back in university, but that was my first real shift into the marketing world.
Yeah, okay. So tell us a little bit about Alif Semiconductor. So it's in the microcontroller business, but it's unlike some of the names that we might know, sort of STMicro, Electronica, NXP, Infineon, Microchip. It's a lot newer than that, isn't it? Alif's only been going since 2019, I think?
Yeah, that's correct. So we were founded in 2019. Like you said, we are a 32-bit microcontroller company. We're based on the Cortex M55 architecture from ARM. But what is probably a little bit different is that we use the Ethos U55 to have an NPU, neural processing unit, on board for artificial intelligence. And we really focus on bringing everything on chip. So you don't need an external PMIC, you don't need any external memories. You're going to be able to do all of that just with our chip. Okay,
very good. So you're in a pretty good part of the market to be, because everyone is talking about AI. Everyone wants to do AI at the edge. So it's great positioning. So what stage is the company at? I mean, to think you've had sort of initial product launch kind of a couple of years ago, and so now you must be, I guess, in sort of like a real ramp-up phase.
Yeah, we first made our Ensemble family available back in 2021, and now here at Electronica, we've just shared with everyone that they can get their hands on Boleto. That is now available.
Boleto being the wireless version of the microcontroller product.
Exactly. So that combines the NPU with the BLE. So when our customers are looking for a MCU that can provide both artificial intelligence and wireless connectivity, that's when they're going to turn to Boleto. Sure.
Okay. So it's a really exciting time for the company. You're Senior Marketing Manager. I guess it falls on you to get the word out. I mean, it's a tough market, isn't it? Because as I was saying, there's a lot of incumbent companies that have strong customer positions. You're really trying to break into that, aren't you? And so I guess you need a lot of people to know a lot about your products and your company, and that's your job.
Yeah, me and the rest of my team, that's what we're really focused on. We do outbound marketing, but we also focus really closely on building relationships with our customers, getting them evaluation kits, really working with them closely to show them how this device can actually amplify their next generation product and take it to a level it hasn't been at before.
Yeah. So here you are. You've found yourself in the world of semiconductors, having come to it from outside. I think a lot of people who are not involved in the semiconductor business can find it strange. I was out for dinner last weekend with some friends and who didn't know what I did, and they asked me the question of, so what's your job? And I said, well, I'm involved, like you, I'm involved in marketing semiconductors, and my friend said to me, what's a semiconductor? And it's strange, isn't it? Because when you're in the world, it seems like the most normal thing, and but when you're outside it, we forget. Many people have absolutely no idea. Do you still sort of, can you hold on to that sort of feeling of kind of strangeness about what semiconductors are that, you know, when you kind of, I guess, first came into this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with semiconductors, microcontrollers, the whole world, there's always more to learn. Every day I probably learn something more from my coworkers and my colleagues who have been in this industry for, 20, 30, 40 years. And our product specifically is very complex. If you compare it to some of the other 32-bit MCUs, the architecture, the power architecture, the system architecture, it is very complex. So I'm always learning something new. Absolutely.
So we are a very sort of engineering-rich kind of industry that we work in. I think it's fair to say that it's just a fact of life that a huge proportion, a majority of the people who are involved in the semiconductor industry are male rather than female. Here you are, you're female, and you're in this industry. Just wanted to ask you about that. Is whether that's and it can feel sort of slightly awkward even asking the question whether there's a lot about sort of identity politics that at the moment is sort of become something sort of very of the moment in the 2020s, but. Does identity as a female in our industry actually even kind of mean anything or count for something today? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I work with mostly men here at Electronica. You look around, you're going to see a lot of men.
Absolutely.
And I think as a woman, you always have to speak louder to be heard. And sometimes you will run into people who kind of look you over as the only female in the room. And I think for me, I've really learned to speak up, to make myself seen, make myself present, and you will have to work a little bit harder than the man in the room.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was something that kind of, I think, sort of came really prominently into the public consciousness with when Sheryl Sandberg published her book, Lean In. Is that something that you feel kind of, I mean, that was very of its moment a few years ago, but to you, does that still feel kind of relevant and important?
I think it is relevant, and I think it is important. I think we need more female engineers. We need more females entering the semiconductor space, and it takes time to get to that point, and it won't happen overnight. But I think it starts way back when girls are in school, and we need to empower them to know that they can take a career in science. They can do math when frequently they're encouraged the opposite and kind of not really persuaded to enter that field. So I think it starts from an early age back in school and really encouraging girls to take on these challenges and enter these fields. Yeah.
So it's an issue for the semiconductor industry. I mean, I'm aware of the kind of the really strong efforts that industry organisations. I'm familiar with SEMI, for instance, which is one of the industry representative bodies that operates globally, has a really active diversity and inclusion kind of program where it's trying to encourage the industry and employers within the semiconductor industry to take seriously the idea of attracting talent from across the global population. So that and part of that is addressing the imbalance between male and female participation in the industry. So there are real efforts being made. But you're saying it's not just about the semiconductor industry; it's actually about kind of society and what goes on in education and elsewhere.
Yeah, I do think it goes beyond semiconductors. I mean, I totally agree it is a problem in the semiconductor industry, but it's not just this industry. I think science, math, and even leadership positions in completely different industries. We need to keep pushing women into those
It's not
fields.
Like it's only semiconductors, or the semiconductor industry that has this issue. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of across the board in business and elsewhere in government and so on, isn't it? It's absolutely. It's kind of it's the patriarchy, isn't it?
It's the patriarchy. Never sleeps.
Absolutely, in the end. So in terms of kind of your experience of that, you talked about kind of needing to be conscious of speaking louder in the room, of there being the fear of being kind of overlooked purely because of your sex rather than what you have to bring to a situation. Is there something around sort of representation as well that is important here, that just sort of, as you say, having the experience of being the only female in the room in a business context, is that sort of sense of representation and being able to see other women around you is also important?
Yeah, no, I think that is important for, women to see that there's other women in the room, there's other women at the company. It's kind of a snowball effect, right? At Alif, we just brought in another female applications engineer, which is really great to see. Yeah. It can be challenging, though, when the majority of the talent applying for the job or available is male. Yeah. So I think, again, it goes all the way back to education in early days. I do think it's getting better. But it's going to take some time. Yeah.
And is there, for the male sort of viewership and listenership to SemiConscious, should we be aware of maybe some unconscious kind of microaggressions or kind of instances of discrimination that we may be doing unconsciously or unintentionally? Is that sort of something that kind of strikes you as part of your everyday experience that you sense males in the industry might actually just be oblivious to?
I think something that happens in offices often, and not specifically my office, but across the board, is women taking on unpaid work, right? Women ordering the lunch, women taking notes, women planning the parties, when that's not really part of their job description, just as it's not part of their male counterpart's job description. So I think just being aware of that, don't automatically assume the female in your office wants to do those things, or even cleaning up after yourself in the office, right? So I think just being aware and also just supporting and amplifying female voices in your office can go a long way. Yeah, okay. So things that we can do, things that we should do, and that we're not necessarily intentionally doing at the moment. Okay, and I guess one other aspect of this might be the existence of role models. We talked about, you mentioned leadership and the way that is similarly skewed towards kind of towards male rather than female at the moment. Nevertheless, there are some amazing examples of female leaderships, or Lisa Seward at AMD and many others that we could name. Does that provide some inspiration, or is it sort of on the other hand, is it a little bit sort of almost disconcerting that these very strong, capable women are so few in number in these senior positions, even though we know that there are so many strong, capable women in the industry already? I think it's both, right? Yeah. On one hand, of course, there's so many inspiring female leaders out there, and the ones you mentioned, absolutely. And I do draw inspiration from that. On the flip side, what you said is also correct. It can be disconcerting to look around and say, why aren't there more females at the top? Or even think, is that person sitting right across from me who's doing a very similar job to me getting paid more just because they're male? Yeah. So those things can be discouraging, but overall, I'm not discouraged. I'm encouraged to keep going and keep pushing, and hopefully one day I can become a role model for young girls looking to get into this field.
Kind of on a final note, is it too early in your career to be thinking about, is that, we talked about Lisa Sue, is that kind of leadership position something that you could have ambitions for yourself as you progress and, through Alif Semiconductor and wherever else your career may take you? Absolutely.
I mean, I would love to be in a leadership position like that. I'm working on my MBA right now at UC Berkeley, which I hope will further that dream. And I think in the meantime, for myself and for anyone else, a lot of what they can do is focus on job crafting. Maybe a specific task isn't in your job description, but if you notice something that's missing on your team or something that's not being done, you don't always have to wait for your boss to ask you to do it. Take the initiative, prove what you can do, and show you can fill that gap. And I think that's a really amazing way to start climbing that ladder.
Fantastic. All right. Wonderful advice, and it's really brilliant to hear your experience of our weird but wonderful world of semiconductors. Thank you, Alexandra, for taking the time to talk to us today.
Thanks so much, Tim. It's always great talking to you.
Okay, pleasure.